Maya Chen was 17 years old, and she had mastered the art of being invisible. It wasn't something she had planned. It just happened slowly, year after year, until she became the kind of girl that teachers forgot to call on and students walked past without a second glance. She sat in the back row of every class. She ate lunch alone in the corner of the cafeteria, usually with a book open in front of her, so no one would feel bad about not talking to her. She kept her head down in the hallways and never raised her hand, even when she knew the answer. At Jefferson High School, Maya Chen was a ghost. And honestly, most days, she preferred it that way. Being invisible meant no one bothered her. No one asked questions about why her clothes were always a little too big or a little too worn. No one wondered why she never went on field trips or bought anything from the school store. Being invisible was safe. It was quiet. It was easier than explaining things she didn't want to explain. But there was one thing about Maya that nobody knew. One secret she kept hidden from everyone at that school. When she played the piano, she came alive. It had started when she was 8 years old. Her grandmother had found an old electronic keyboard at a thrift store. The kind with tiny speakers and keys that didn't quite feel like a real piano. It was missing the power cord, so her grandmother had spent an extra $2 to buy a generic one from the store next door. The whole thing cost $11. Every girl should know how to make music, her grandmother had said, setting it on the kitchen table like it was something precious. Music is the one thing nobody can take from you. Maya didn't understand what that meant at the time. She was just a kid. But she loved that keyboard from the first moment she touched it. She loved the way the sounds came out. The way she could press different keys and create something that hadn't existed before. It felt like magic. Her family couldn't afford piano lessons. That was never even a conversation. Her mother worked 2 jobs just to keep the lights on and food in the refrigerator. Her father had left when Maya was 5, and she barely remembered his face anymore. There was no extra money for lessons or tutors or fancy music programs, so Maya taught herself. She watched videos online for hours. She studied the way people's fingers moved across the keys. She paused and rewound, and played the same 10 seconds over and over, until she understood what was happening. She printed out sheet music at the school library, and practiced until her fingers ached, and her mother told her to go to bed. By the time she was 12, she could play simple songs. By 14, she was working through pieces that most students didn't attempt until college. By 17, she had taught herself things that would have taken others a decade of professional training to learn. But nobody at school knew any of this. Maya never talked about it. She never joined the music club or signed up for the talent show. That would mean being seen. That would mean stepping out of the shadows, and Maya wasn't ready for that. Or at least, she thought she wasn't. Everything changed on a Thursday evening in October. Mr. Holloway, the music teacher at Jefferson High, had stayed late that day to organize some sheet music for an upcoming concert. He was tired and thinking about what to make for dinner when he heard something strange coming from the auditorium. Piano music. He stopped in the hallway and listened. The auditorium was supposed to be empty. All the students had gone home hours ago. But someone was definitely playing. And whoever it was, they were good. Really good. Mr. Holloway had been teaching music for almost 20 years. He had heard hundreds of students play. Some were talented, a few were exceptional. But this was different. This music had something he couldn't quite name. It had feeling. It had soul. It sounded like someone was pouring their whole heart out through those keys. He walked slowly toward the auditorium, almost afraid to interrupt. The doors were heavy, and he pushed one open just enough to slip inside. The auditorium was dark, except for a single light on the stage, the one that was always left on for safety. And there, sitting at the old grand piano that the school had owned for decades, was a girl he almost didn't recognize. Maya Chen, the quiet girl from the back row. The one who never spoke in class. The one he had probably said fewer than 10 words to all year. She was playing Chopin, one of the nocturnes. And she was playing it beautifully. Mr. Holloway stood frozen by the door. He watched her hands move across the keys with a grace that seemed impossible for someone so young. He watched her close her eyes and lean into the music like she was having a conversation with it. He saw tears rolling down her cheeks, catching the light. She wasn't just playing the notes. She was living them. When the piece ended, the last note hung in the air for a long moment. Maya sat very still, her hands resting on the keys. She looked peaceful. In a way, Mr. Holloway had never seen her look before. Then she heard him shift his weight, and her head snapped toward the door. The fear in her eyes was immediate. She looked like a deer caught in headlights, like she had been discovered doing something wrong. She started to stand, already stammering apologies. "I'm sorry. I didn't think anyone was here. I'll leave. I'm sorry." "Wait," Mr. Holloway said, walking down the aisle toward the stage. "Please, don't go." Maya froze, one hand still on the piano. "How long have you been playing?" he asked. She swallowed hard. "Since I was 8. "Who taught you?" A pause. "Nobody. I taught myself. Videos. Sheet music. Just practicing." Mr. Holloway stared at her. In 20 years of teaching, he had never heard of anyone teaching themselves to play like that. It shouldn't have been possible, but here she was, living proof that it was. "That was Chopin," he said. "Nocturne in E-flat major." Maya nodded slowly. "Do you know how difficult that piece is?" She didn't answer. She just looked down at her hands. Mr. Holloway climbed the steps to the stage and stood a few feet away from her. He could see the tear tracks still drying on her face. He could see the way she held herself, like she was ready to run at any moment. "Maya," he said softly, "you have a gift, a real gift. I've been teaching for a very long time, and I can count on one hand the number of students I've heard play with that kind of emotion. Why haven't you ever said anything? Why haven't you joined any of the music programs?" She finally looked up at him. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Because nobody ever asked." Those 4 words hit Mr. Holloway harder than he expected. He thought about all the times he had walked past this girl in the hallway without a second glance. All the times she had sat silently in the back of the room while he focused on the louder, more confident students. How many other kids had he missed? How many other gifts had gone unnoticed? He made a decision right then and there. "There's a spring showcase in April," he said. "It's the biggest performance of the year. Parents, donors, school board members, everyone comes. There's a solo piano spot that I haven't filled yet." Maya's eyes went wide. "I can't." "You can," he said firmly. "And you will. If you want to." She was quiet for a long time. The auditorium felt huge around them, full of shadows and empty seats. Finally, she spoke. "Okay." Mr. Holloway smiled. It was the first time he had ever seen Maya Chen smile back. Neither of them knew it yet, but that single word was about to change everything. The weeks that followed were the happiest of Maya's life. Every day after school, she would slip into the auditorium and practice on the grand piano. Mr. Holloway gave her a key so she could come and go as she pleased. He sat in the back row sometimes, grading papers while she played, offering quiet suggestions when she finished a piece. He never pushed too hard. He understood that Maya was like a bird that had been kept in a cage for too long. She needed space to stretch her wings, and stretch them she did. Maya worked on 3 different pieces for the showcase. She practiced scales until her fingers moved without thinking. She studied recordings of professional pianists and tried to understand what made their performances special. She stayed so late some nights that Mr. Holloway had to remind her to go home and get some sleep. For the first time in years, Maya felt like she had something to look forward to. She felt like she mattered, but not everyone was happy about the new arrangement. Principal Diane Hartley had been running Jefferson High School for almost 8 years. She was a tall woman with sharp eyes and a smile that never quite reached them. She kept her office immaculate, with framed awards on the walls and a large wooden desk that made visitors feel small. She believed in order, reputation, and results. She believed that a school was only as good as how it looked to the outside world, and she had plans for the spring showcase. Plans that did not include Maya Chen. Principal Hartley had a niece named Brianna. Brianna was a senior, a straight-A student, and she had been taking piano lessons since she was 4 years old. Her parents had spent thousands of dollars on private instructors, music camps, and competitions. She was good. Not extraordinary, but good enough. More importantly, Brianna's parents were generous donors to Jefferson High. They had funded the new computer lab, the renovated gymnasium, and the scholarship program that Principal Hartley loved to mention in her speeches. When Brianna's mother called and said she expected her daughter to have the solo spot at the showcase, Principal Hartley had agreed without hesitation. That was back in September. Everything had been arranged. Brianna would perform, the donors would be impressed, and everyone would be happy. Then Mr. Holloway submitted Maya's name for the solo. When Principal Hartley saw the email, she felt a flash of irritation. Who was Maya Chen? She pulled up the girl's file and frowned at what she saw. Average grades. A few absences here and there. No extracurricular activities. No awards. Nothing impressive at all. This girl was nobody. Principal Hartley called Mr. Holloway into her office that same afternoon. I see you've submitted a student for the showcase solo, she said, folding her hands on her desk. Maya Chen. Mr. Holloway nodded. Yes. She's incredibly talented. One of the best I've ever heard. I'm sure she's adequate, Principal Hartley replied coolly. But the solo spot has already been promised to Brianna Wells. Her family has been very supportive of this school. Mr. Holloway's expression tightened. With all due respect, the showcase should be about talent, not donations. It's about representing Jefferson High at its best. Principal Hartley's voice hardened. Brianna is a model student. She has the grades, the discipline, and the background. Maya Chen does not. Maya has more raw talent than anyone I've taught in 20 years. Talent isn't everything, Mr. Holloway. This discussion is over. But Mr. Holloway didn't give up. He argued. He sent emails. He requested meetings. He even brought recordings of Maya's practice sessions, hoping that if Principal Hartley just heard her play, she would change her mind. She refused to listen to a single one. 3 days before the showcase, Principal Hartley decided to handle the situation herself. She called Maya into her office during lunch period. Maya had never been to the principal's office before. She walked through the door with her hands clasped nervously in front of her. Unsure what to expect, the room felt cold despite the sunlight coming through the window. Principal Hartley sat behind her massive desk like a queen on a throne. Sit down, she said, gesturing to the chair across from her. Maya sat. Principal Hartley studied her for a long moment. The way someone might study an insect under a microscope. Then she slid a piece of paper across the desk. I'm removing you from the spring showcase program, she said flatly. Maya felt the words hit her like a punch to the stomach. What? Why? Your academic record is not up to the standards we expect from showcase performers. Your grades are mediocre. You've had attendance issues. This school has a reputation to protect, and the showcase is attended by very important people. Donors, board members, community leaders. We need students who represent the best of Jefferson High. Maya's throat tightened. But I've been practicing for months, Mr. Holloway said. Mr. Holloway overstepped his authority. Principal Hartley's voice was ice. He should not have made promises he couldn't keep. The decision about who performs is mine, not his. Please. Maya hated how small her voice sounded. This is the only thing I've ever been good at. Please don't take this away from me. For just a moment, something flickered in Principal Hartley's eyes. It might have been guilt. It might have been discomfort. But whatever it was, she pushed it aside quickly. The decision is final, she said. You may go. Maya walked out of that office in a daze. She didn't remember the hallway. She didn't remember the faces of students passing by. She found herself in the bathroom, locked in a stall, crying so hard she couldn't breathe. Everything she had worked for, everything she had dreamed about, gone in 5 minutes. Meanwhile, Mr. Holloway had heard what happened. One of the office assistants had mentioned it to him in passing, and he felt his blood run cold. He marched straight to Principal Hartley's office and walked in without knocking. You can't do this, he said. Principal Hartley looked up from her computer, unfazed. I already have. That girl has more talent in her little finger than most students will ever have. She deserves this chance. She deserves nothing. She has earned nothing. Her grades are average at best, and frankly, I don't understand why you're so invested in a student who has shown no commitment to academic excellence. Mr. Holloway stepped closer to her desk. This isn't about grades and you know it. This is about Brianna. This is about her family's money. Principal Hartley's eyes flashed dangerously. Be very careful, Mr. Holloway. I've been teaching here for 15 years. I've never seen anything this unfair. If you go through with this, I'll go to the school board myself. Principal Hartley stood slowly, her palms flat on the desk. Her voice dropped to something quiet and threatening. If Maya Chen steps onto that stage, she will be expelled. I will find a reason. Attendance. Dress code. Something. And you? She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You will be terminated. I'll make sure you never teach in this district again. Mr. Holloway stared at her. He had known Principal Hartley was difficult. He had known she cared more about appearances than people. But this was something else. This was cruelty dressed up in a professional suit. You would destroy a student's future to protect your niece's ego? I would protect this school's reputation, Principal Hartley replied. And I would advise you to think very carefully about your next move. She sat back down and returned her attention to her computer, dismissing him without another word. Mr. Holloway walked out of that office feeling like he had just lost a battle. But as he stood in the hallway, watching students stream past without any idea of what was happening behind closed doors, he made himself a promise. This wasn't over. He didn't know how, and he didn't know when, but he was going to find a way to get Maya Chen on that stage, even if it cost him everything. That night, he sat alone in his classroom long after everyone had gone home. He stared at the piano in the corner and thought about all the students who had come through his door over the years. The ones who gave up, the ones who never got a chance, the ones whose gifts were buried under poverty or circumstance or people who simply didn't believe in them. Maya was different. Maya had fought her whole life just to be seen. And now, when she was finally ready to step into the light, someone was trying to shove her back into the shadows. He picked up his phone and scrolled through his contacts. There had to be someone who could help. Someone who would listen. And then he remembered something. The school board was scheduled to attend the showcase. They came every year to evaluate programs and observe how the school presented itself to the community. They would be sitting in that auditorium, watching everything. A small spark of hope flickered in his chest. If Maya could just get on that stage, even for a few minutes, they would hear her. They would see what she could do. And maybe, just maybe, the truth would come out. It was risky. It could backfire horribly. But it was the only chance they had. Now he just needed to convince Maya to take it. Maya didn't go to school the next day. She told her mother she was sick, which wasn't exactly a lie. She felt hollow inside, like someone had reached into her chest and scooped out everything that made her feel alive. She stayed in bed until noon, staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation with Principal Hartley over and over in her mind. Your grades are mediocre. You've had attendance issues. The decision is final. The words echoed like a cruel song stuck on repeat. Around 1 o'clock, she finally dragged herself out of bed and walked into the small living room of their apartment. It wasn't much. A worn couch, a television that only worked half the time. A tiny kitchen separated by a counter covered in bills her mother was trying to figure out how to pay. And there, in the corner by the window, sat her grandmother's keyboard. Maya stood in front of it for a long time. The keys were yellowed now. A few of them stuck when you pressed them. The speakers crackled if you turned the volume up too high, but it was still the same keyboard her grandmother had brought home all those years ago, wrapped in a plastic bag and smelling like dust and old things. She sat down on the small stool and rested her fingers on the keys. She didn't play. She just sat there, feeling the smooth plastic under her fingertips, remembering. Her grandmother had passed away 2 years ago. Cancer. It happened fast. Faster than anyone expected. 1 month she was laughing and making dinner, and the next she was gone. Maya had held her hand in the hospital during those final days, and her grandmother had looked at her with tired eyes and said something Maya would never forget. You have music in your soul, little one. Don't ever let anyone silence it. Maya had nodded and promised she wouldn't. But now, sitting in this empty apartment with her dreams crushed, She wondered if she had already broken that promise. She pressed a single key. The note rang out, thin and tinny, but still beautiful in its own way. And then she started to cry. She cried for her grandmother, who would never hear her play on a real stage. She cried for all the years she had spent invisible, hoping that someday someone would notice her. She cried for the unfairness of it all, the way some people seemed to have everything handed to them while others had to fight for every scrap. She cried until there was nothing left. When her mother came home from work that evening, she found Maya sitting on the couch with red eyes and a blank expression. "Baby, what happened?" Her mother dropped her bag and rushed over. "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" Maya shook her head slowly. "They took away my spot in the showcase." Her mother's face shifted from worry to confusion. "What? Why? I thought your teacher said you were perfect for it." "The principal doesn't want me." Maya's voice was flat. "She said my grades aren't good enough. She said I don't represent the school well." Her mother was quiet for a moment. Then she sat down next to Maya and took her hand. "Is that really the reason?" Maya looked at her. "What do you mean?" I've been working 2 jobs since you were little. I know how the world works. When someone in power tells you that you're not good enough, it usually has nothing to do with you and everything to do with them." She squeezed Maya's hand. "So I'm asking you, is that really the reason?" Maya thought about Brianna. She thought about the donations. She thought about the way Principal Hartley had looked at her, like she was nothing more than an inconvenience. "No," she whispered, "it's not." Her mother nodded. "Then, you have a choice to make." "What choice?" She said, "If I perform, she'll expel me. And if you don't perform, what happens?" Maya didn't have an answer. She would go back to being invisible. She would finish high school without anyone ever knowing what she could do. She would graduate and get some job somewhere and spend the rest of her life wondering what might have been. Her mother stood up and walked over to the keyboard. She ran her fingers along the top, tracing the outline of the old speakers. "Your grandmother bought this for $11, she said softly. "She worked overtime for 2 weeks to save up that money. She didn't buy it because she thought you would become famous. She bought it because she saw something in you. Something special." She turned back to look at Maya. "I see it too. I've always seen it. And I think you need to decide if you're going to let one person's cruelty define your future, or if you're going to show the world who you really are." Maya didn't sleep much that night. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything her mother had said, thinking about her grandmother, thinking about Mr. Holloway and how hard he had fought for her, thinking about the piano on that empty stage, waiting for someone to play it. Around midnight, her phone buzzed. A text from Mr. Holloway. "I know you're hurting. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from this. But I want you to know that I believe in you. Whatever you decide, I'll support you." Maya read the message 3 times. Then she typed a reply. "Can we talk tomorrow?" The response came almost instantly. "Of course. Come to my classroom after school." The next day, Maya walked into Mr. Holloway's room and closed the door behind her. He was sitting at his desk, looking tired. There were dark circles under his eyes, like he hadn't slept much either. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "I've been better." She sat down across from him. "I've been thinking a lot." "About what?" Maya took a deep breath. "About what would happen if I played anyway." Mr. Holloway's eyes widened slightly. "Maya, you know what Principal Hartley said. If you step on that stage, she'll expel me." "I know." Maya's voice was steady now, stronger than it had been in days. "But I've spent my whole life being afraid. Afraid of being noticed, afraid of standing out, afraid of taking up space. And look where it got me. Nowhere." She leaned forward. "My grandmother told me that music is the one thing nobody can take from you. But she was wrong. They can take it. They can silence you and push you aside and pretend you don't exist, unless you fight back." Mr. Holloway studied her face for a long moment. "You understand the risk. This could follow you. Expulsion goes on your record." "I know. Your mother could get called in. There could be legal issues. I know, and there's no guarantee it will work. You could play beautifully and still lose everything. Maya nodded slowly. I know all of that. But here's what I also know. If I don't try, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. And I don't want to live with that. Mr. Holloway was silent. He looked at the piano in the corner of his classroom. The same one Maya had practiced on so many times. Then he looked back at her. The showcase is in 2 days, he said quietly. Brianna is scheduled to perform at 7:45. If something were to happen with the lights, if there was some kind of distraction, there would be about 30 seconds of confusion before anyone figured out what was going on. Maya's heart started beating faster. What are you saying? I'm saying that the side door to the auditorium will be unlocked. I'm saying that if someone were to walk onto that stage during those 30 seconds, they might have just enough time to sit down at that piano before anyone could stop them. He met her eyes. I'm saying that if you really want to do this, I'll help you. Maya felt something shift inside her. Fear, yes, but something else too. Something that felt a lot like hope. What about you? She asked. She threatened to fire you. Mr. Holloway shrugged. I've been teaching for a long time. Maybe too long. But I got into this job because I wanted to help kids like you. Kids with talent and heart. And no one in their corner. If I let her win, if I let her silence you, then what was the point of any of it? And he stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the empty courtyard. Besides, he said quietly, some things are worth the risk. Maya stood up too. She walked over and stood next to him, looking out at the same view. Okay, she said. Let's do it. Mr. Holloway smiled. It was a tired smile, but a real one. Then we've got a lot of work to do. You have 2 days to prepare the performance of your life. Maya nodded. The fear was still there, coiled in her stomach like a snake. But alongside it was something else now. Determination. Purpose, a fire that had been smoldering inside her for years, finally given permission to burn. She was going to walk onto that stage, and she was going to show them all. The night of the spring showcase arrived faster than Maya expected. She stood in front of the bathroom mirror in her apartment, staring at her reflection. She was wearing a simple black dress that her mother had found at a second-hand store the day before. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't expensive, but it fit well. And when Maya looked at herself, she almost didn't recognize the person staring back. She looked like someone who belonged on a stage. Her mother appeared in the doorway behind her, eyes shining with something between pride and worry. You look beautiful, she said softly. Maya tried to smile, but her lips were trembling. I'm scared, Mom. Her mother walked over and put her hands on Maya's shoulders. Good. That means you care. That means this matters to you. She turned Maya around to face her. Listen to me. No matter what happens tonight, I want you to know that I am so proud of you, not because of what you can do on that piano. Because of who you are. Because you're brave enough to try. Maya hugged her mother tight, breathing in the familiar scent of laundry detergent and the cheap perfume she'd worn for as long as Maya could remember. I have to go, Maya whispered. Mr. Holloway is waiting. Her mother nodded and let her go. Play for your grandmother tonight. She's watching. Maya grabbed her coat and walked out the door. The school parking lot was already full when she arrived. Cars lined up along the street, families walking toward the main entrance in their nice clothes, chattering excitedly about the performances they were about to see. Maya avoided the front door. She circled around to the back of the building, where a single door led to the backstage area. Just like Mr. Holloway had promised, it was unlocked. She slipped inside and found herself in the darkness behind the curtains. She could hear the murmur of the crowd on the other side, hundreds of voices blending together into a low hum. Her heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. Mr. Holloway found her a few minutes later. He looked nervous too, but he was doing his best to hide it. How are you feeling? He asked quietly. Like I might throw up. He laughed softly. That's normal. Every great performer feels that way before they go on. It means you're ready. What if something goes wrong? Something probably will. But you'll handle it. You've been handling things your whole life. He put a hand on her shoulder. Remember, Brianna goes on at 7:45. When she finishes, There will be a moment where the lights go down before the next act. That's your window. I'll make sure the spotlight hits the piano. You just have to get there." Maya nodded, not trusting herself to speak. "One more thing," Mr. Holloway said. He glanced around to make sure no one was listening. "I found out something interesting today. The school board decided to come tonight. All 5 members, including the superintendent. They're sitting in the back row." Maya's eyes went wide. "They're here? They want to evaluate Principal Hartley's leadership. Apparently there have been some complaints." He gave her a meaningful look. "Whatever happens on that stage tonight, they're going to see it." Maya felt a spark of hope cut through her fear. If the school board was watching, if they saw what really happened, maybe there was a chance. Maybe the truth would actually matter. She found a spot behind a curtain where she could see the stage without being seen. The showcase had already started. A jazz band played first, then a choir, then a group of dancers. The audience clapped politely after each performance. Maya watched it all through a gap in the fabric, her palms sweating. And then it was 7:45. The lights dimmed. A single spotlight illuminated the grand piano at the center of the stage. And Brianna Wells walked out in a flowing blue gown, her blonde hair perfectly styled, her smile bright and confident. The audience applauded warmly. Maya could see Principal Hartley in the front row, beaming like a proud parent. Brianna sat down at the piano, adjusted herself, and began to play. She was good. Maya had to admit that. Her fingers moved cleanly across the keys, hitting every note with precision. She had been well trained. You could hear the thousands of dollars of lessons in every measure. But there was something missing. Something Maya couldn't quite name. The music was correct, but it didn't feel alive. It was like watching someone read a poem without understanding what the words meant. The piece lasted about 4 minutes. When Brianna finished, she stood and took a bow. The audience clapped enthusiastically. Principal Hartley rose to her feet, leading a standing ovation that felt forced and hollow. Maya's hands were shaking. This was it. The lights went down. For a moment, the auditorium was completely dark. Maya heard the shuffle of feet, the murmur of voices, someone coughing in the back row, and then she moved. She stepped out from behind the curtain and walked across the stage. Her footsteps were silent on the wooden floor. The darkness wrapped around her like a blanket. She couldn't see the audience. She couldn't see anything except the faint outline of the piano ahead of her. She sat down on the bench. Her fingers found the keys, and then the spotlight snapped on. The sudden brightness made her squint. For a moment, she was frozen, caught like a deer in headlights. She heard gasps from the audience. She heard someone say, "Who is that?" She heard Principal Hartley's voice, sharp and angry. "What is this? This isn't part of the program." Maya saw the principal stand up, her face twisted with fury. She started moving toward the stage, pushing past people in the front row. Maya had maybe 10 seconds before everything fell apart, so she started to play. The first notes of Claire de Lune filled the auditorium, soft and gentle, like moonlight touching water. Maya closed her eyes and let the music take over. She forgot about Principal Hartley. She forgot about the audience. She forgot about everything except the feeling of the keys beneath her fingers and the melody pouring out of her soul. She played for her grandmother, who had believed in her when no one else did. She played for her mother, who had worked so hard to give her a chance at a better life. She played for Mr. Holloway, who had risked everything to help her. And she played for herself. For the invisible girl who had spent years hiding in the shadows, waiting for permission to exist. The music swelled and grew, filling every corner of that auditorium. It was beautiful and sad and hopeful all at once. It was everything Maya had never been able to say out loud, translated into notes and chords and silence. In the front row, Principal Hartley had stopped moving. She stood frozen in the aisle, her mouth slightly open, the anger on her face slowly giving way to something else. Confusion, maybe, or disbelief. In the back row, Superintendent Williams leaned forward in her seat. She had been at hundreds of these events over the years. She had heard countless students perform. But this was different. This girl, whoever she was, had something special. Something rare. The other board members exchanged glances. One of them pulled out a notepad and started writing. The piece lasted almost 5 minutes. Maya played every note from memory, her eyes closed the entire time. She didn't need to see. She knew this music like she knew her own heartbeat. It was part of her. When the final note faded into silence, Maya let her hands rest on the keys. She kept her eyes closed for a moment longer, afraid of what she might see when she opened them. Then she heard it. One person clapping. Then another. Then 10 more. Then 50. She opened her eyes. The entire auditorium was on their feet. People were wiping tears from their eyes. Students she had never talked to were cheering. Even some of the teachers looked moved. Maya stood slowly, her legs unsteady beneath her. She didn't know what to do. She had never taken a bow in her life. She settled for a small nod, her cheeks burning. And then Principal Hartley's voice cut through the applause like a knife. This student was not authorized to perform. The clapping died down. Everyone turned to look at the principal, who had grabbed a microphone from the side of the stage. Her face was red. Her hands were shaking with barely contained rage. This girl violated school policy. She was explicitly told she could not participate in tonight's event. She will face immediate disciplinary action, including expulsion from Jefferson High School. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Parents looked at each other with confusion. Students whispered among themselves. Maya felt her heart sink. It had all been for nothing. She had played her heart out, and it didn't matter. Principal Hartley was going to destroy her anyway. But then a voice rang out from the back of the auditorium. Actually, I think we'd like to hear more about that. Everyone turned to look. Superintendent Williams was standing, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. The other board members stood beside her, all of them watching Principal Hartley with intense focus. We came here tonight to observe, the superintendent continued, her voice calm but commanding. And I have to say, what we've observed so far has been very interesting indeed. She began walking down the center aisle, her heels clicking against the floor. Principal Hartley's face went pale, and Maya, still standing on that stage with the spotlight shining down on her, realized that the night was far from over. The auditorium had gone completely silent. Every eye was on Superintendent Williams as she walked down the center aisle, her footsteps echoing in the stillness. The other 4 board members followed behind her, their faces serious and focused. They looked like judges entering a courtroom. Principal Hartley still held the microphone, but her hand had started to tremble. The color had drained from her face. She looked like someone who had just realized they were standing on very thin ice. Superintendent Williams, she said, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I didn't realize you would be attending tonight. What a pleasant surprise. The superintendent stopped a few feet away from her. She didn't return the smile. We decided to come unannounced, she said calmly. We've received some concerns about how this school is being managed. Tonight seemed like a good opportunity to observe things firsthand. Principal Hartley swallowed hard. I assure you, everything is under control. This situation with the student is simply a matter of discipline. She was told she couldn't perform, and she disobeyed. And why was she told she couldn't perform? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Principal Hartley opened her mouth, then closed it again. For a moment, she looked like a fish gasping for water. Her grades, she finally said. Her attendance record. She doesn't meet the standards we require for showcase performers. Superintendent Williams turned to look at Maya, who was still standing on the stage, frozen in the spotlight. Then she looked back at Principal Hartley. I just watched that young woman play one of the most beautiful pieces of music I've ever heard in my life. Half this auditorium is in tears, and you're telling me she's not qualified to perform because of her grades? A murmur rippled through the crowd. Parents were whispering to each other. Teachers exchanged uncomfortable glances. There are standards, Principal Hartley insisted, her voice rising slightly. Rules. We can't just let anyone walk onto the stage because they think they're talented. But you can let your niece perform, even though she's not the most talented pianist in this school? The words landed like a bomb. Principal Hartley's face went from pale to bright red in an instant. I don't know what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. Superintendent Williams reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. I'm stating facts. We received a formal complaint from a teacher at this school 3 weeks ago. He documented everything. The emails you sent pressuring him to remove this student from the program. The threats you made when he refused. The real reason you wanted her gone. She opened the folder and held up a printed email. This is from you to Mr. Holloway. It says, and I quote, Brianna has been promised this opportunity. Her family has been extremely generous to Jefferson High, and I will not allow some nobody to take what belongs to her. Gasps echoed through the auditorium. People turned to stare at Principal Hartley with shock and disbelief. In the front row, Brianna's parents looked like they wanted to disappear into the floor. Principal Hartley's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Mr. Holloway stepped forward from the side of the stage. His voice was steady and clear. I filed that complaint because what was happening wasn't right. Maya Chen is one of the most gifted students I've ever taught. She taught herself to play piano by watching videos online because her family couldn't afford lessons. She practiced for hours every day on a broken keyboard in her living room. She earned this moment through years of hard work and dedication. He looked at Principal Hartley with something like pity in his eyes. And you tried to take it away from her because of money. Because of connections. Because you cared more about pleasing wealthy donors than doing what was right for your students. The auditorium erupted. Parents were shouting questions. Students were talking loudly among themselves. Someone in the back started slow, clapping, and others joined in until the whole room was filled with the sound. Through it all, Maya stood on the stage, tears streaming down her face. She couldn't believe what was happening. After all those years of being invisible, of being overlooked, of being told she wasn't good enough, someone was finally standing up for her. The truth was finally coming out. Her mother had pushed through the crowd and was standing at the edge of the stage, looking up at her with tears in her own eyes. Maya had never seen her mother look so proud. Superintendent Williams raised her hand, and the noise gradually died down. Principal Hartley, she said, her voice cold and official. You will be placed on administrative leave effective immediately. There will be a full investigation into your conduct. Based on what I've seen tonight, I expect you will be removed from your position permanently. Principal Hartley looked like she had been slapped. Her mouth trembled. For a moment, it seemed like she might argue, might try to defend herself one more time, but then something in her seemed to collapse. Her shoulders sagged. The microphone slipped from her fingers and clattered to the floor. Without another word, she turned and walked out of the auditorium, pushing through the side door and disappearing into the night. No one tried to stop her. Superintendent Williams turned to face the audience. I want to apologize to everyone here tonight for what you've witnessed. This is not what Jefferson High School should stand for. We should be lifting up our students, not tearing them down. We should be celebrating talent and hard work, not connections and money. She looked up at Maya. Young lady, what is your name? Maya's voice came out as barely a whisper. Maya Chen. The superintendent smiled warmly. Maya Chen, on behalf of the school board, I want to thank you for your courage tonight. What you did took incredible bravery. And that performance. She shook her head slowly. I've never heard anything like it. She reached into her bag and pulled out a business card. I sit on the board of the Riverside Performing Arts Academy. It's one of the best music schools in the state. I'm going to personally recommend you for a full scholarship. If you're interested, that is. Maya felt her knees go weak. A scholarship, a real music school, everything she had ever dreamed of, suddenly within reach. Yes, she managed to say. Yes, I'm interested. The audience burst into applause again, louder than before. People were standing, cheering, celebrating. Mr. Holloway was grinning from ear to ear. Maya's mother had climbed onto the stage and was hugging her so tightly she could barely breathe. In the chaos, Maya caught sight of Brianna standing off to the side with her parents. She expected to see anger on their faces, or resentment. But instead, Brianna just looked tired, sad, even. Like she had been carrying a weight that was never hers to carry in the first place. Their eyes met for just a moment. Brianna gave her a small nod, almost like an acknowledgement. Then she turned and walked away with her parents. Maya never saw her again. 2 years later, Maya graduated from the Riverside Performing Arts Academy at the top of her class. She had performed in concert halls across the country. She had won competitions she never even knew existed. She had a future brighter than anything she had ever imagined. But on graduation day, she made one special trip. She went back to Jefferson High School. The auditorium looked the same as she remembered. The same wooden stage, the same old grand piano, the same rows of seats stretching back into the shadows. But there was one difference. Mr. Holloway was standing at the podium, wearing a suit and tie, smiling at her from across the room. He had been named principal 6 months after Hartley was removed. The school board had recognized his integrity, his dedication, and his willingness to fight for his students. He had spent the last 2 years transforming Jefferson High into a place where every student was seen, heard, and valued. "I was hoping you'd come," he said, as she walked down the aisle. "I couldn't stay away." Maya looked around at the empty seats, remembering that night. The fear, the spotlight, the music that had changed her life. "Would you play something?" Mr. Holloway asked, "for old time's sake?" Maya smiled and climbed onto the stage. She sat down at the piano and rested her fingers on the keys. They felt like old friends. She thought about her grandmother, who had started all of this with an $11 keyboard and a simple belief that every girl should know how to make music. She thought about her mother, who had worked so hard and never stopped believing in her. She thought about all the invisible kids out there, the ones waiting for someone to notice them, to give them a chance. And then she began to play. The music filled the auditorium, just like it had that night 2 years ago. But this time, there was no fear, no desperation, no need to prove anything to anyone. This time, it was just joy. Pure, simple, beautiful joy. And somewhere, Maya knew, her grandmother was listening.